All right, good evening and welcome to the Thursday, November 21st, 2019 edition of the Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals. Before I begin this evening, is anybody recording? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. If you have any electronic devices, if you could put them down to a silent or vibrate mode, I would appreciate it. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so just for a record, our first hearing this evening, they submitted a request to continue late this afternoon, actually. It was received November 21st. So the impact fitness hearing, to open it, we'll agree to continue it and close it. So the first one here we have this evening is a 7 o'clock p.m. applicant, Impact Fitness, Andrew Lawton, requesting a special permit under 6.2.3 for relief from parking regulations for property located at 314 Washington Street, Auburn, Mass., map 42, parcel 9, and this is a continuation from the 10/17/19 meeting. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'll just read this very quickly. Received November 21st, 2019 from the town of Auburn. From Impact Fitness, project location is 314 Washington Street. Says, I, the undersigned, on behalf of myself or my client, agree on this date, 11/21/19, to continue the subdivision hearing or public hearing for a site plan or special permit. If, by granting this extension, the next hearing falls outside of the time frame in which the board must act, I grant an extension of that time frame for 30 days from the date above, and it is signed by the applicant party. So do I have a motion to accept the request for continuation?
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that's duly noted. Do I have a motion to close the 7 o'clock p.m. hearing?
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we actually do have to wait. We're not allowed to start hearings early per the agenda. So we have a 7:10. So I do have a request for, could I have a request for a continuation, or excuse me, request for a recess for about 7 minutes, it looks like, somewhere around there.
I'll make a request for recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to go into recess for about 7 or 8 minutes.
Gonna come out of recess.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so we are out of recess. So before we begin our 7:10 hearing, we have minutes to approve, and they are from 8:15:19, 9:19:19, and 10:17:19. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as written and submitted for those three particular dates?
Motion to accept is noted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, minutes have been accepted. And 2 minutes. Just, they can improve it, so why not improve it with the drive? Strange to me. What do you think? They might be. Supposed to be bigger instead.
Chairman, I've got 710.
Thank you so much. I was just reading through some paperwork. So we have a 710 application. It is applicant Lynn Beauregard requesting a variance under section 5.4 of the zoning bylaws to provide relief from the required 20-foot front yard setback for property located at 15 Ward Street, Auburn, Mass., map 13, parcel 140. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion open.
Second.
All in favor? Is the applicant present? Ma'am, if you could approach the lectern, introduce yourself, give us an overview of the project, explain what you'd like to accomplish. We won't bite. Nobody will yell at you, so you'll be okay. Do I have abutters present for this hearing also? Any abutters present for this particular hearing? No? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lynn Beauregard. I'm requesting a variance, and you said front yard, 20 feet from the,
Well, this is how it was written in my description of the,
so I wish to
request,
put
so-
an addition onto my house, but there's an easement on the side of my house, Earl Street,
okay?
and I guess the addition should be 20 feet from the road. That's why they denied the permit, because they said it wasn't 20 feet from the road, but there is no road, it's just an easement. So it would be at least 10 feet from that boundary. And so I'd like to put the addition up. There is no road, it's a paper road. And that's not the front of my house, it's the side. The street runs along this.
Okay, so I'm going to just kind of, so that's it's considered a front yard setback as far as the town is concerned, but you are going to the side yard?
Yes.
Front yard's off of Ward Street, and the building's already there. There's no addition going in the front,
It's all on the side.
Right, okay.
The side and the back, mostly the back.
mostly the back.
Okay, so if you're satisfied with your statement, I'm going to send it over to the board members for individual questions. Is that all right? Okay. Mr. Cussy?
We have a written statement there that people can read, right?
Okay. Yeah, we actually have your written statement submitted, but, so I'd like to ask questions directly to the applicant. Okay, thank you. Mr. Chacolo?
Hi. As written with that paper road, the addition you're thinking of putting on, what you feel would be the side yard would be considered the front yard of a
To Earl Street.
paper road.
Okay,
So you would need 20 feet there.
but it's a non-road. I mean, I'm not sure what the issue is
I
because,
think there's a whole legal matter that is probably going to have to be settled, and this is a layman's opinion.
so we went to a lawyer and consulted a lawyer, and I guess we didn't, it was more about the driveway because we were going to use part of that, the easement as our driveway. And so we went and got legal advice, and they told us that as long as you were able to pass and repass on the easement, that it wouldn't be an issue.
I
As
think
long
it-
as people had access to pass and repass, it wasn't an issue. And nowhere along the lines did they ever say anything about the structure.
About what?
The structure, the house itself,
Well,
being
I-
close, you
there's
know,
two
being that
separate
close.
issues there.
Right. But I'm just saying, it's not,
Through the chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Could I provide town council's letter to the applicant, just so they can review it?
Did they did or did not receive a copy of that?
I am not sure they did, if,
Okay.
so I can provide
Yeah, I
that
mean,
now.
I would certainly think that should have been provided, but...
Yeah.
So what you're receiving now from the law officer, Robert Hennigan, this is our town attorney's opinion, also with some commentary, I believe, or observation with William Coyle, too, so... And again, I think this specifically speaks to the driveway part of the project.
Through the chair, if I may, I believe town council did touch on the front yard setback as
Right.
well.
Begins with the front yard on Earl.
What's that?
we don't have our lawyers on.
No. This lawyer has our lawyers.
You have a chance to read through that? Okay. So just for the record, while we're going through this, we have an opinion letter from the town attorney, and I believe that you may have sought out an opinion of your own from a local law office. So we also received this from the law offices of Roach and Wren, with a dissenting opinion, I guess, if you will. Mr. Jones, do you have any comments or questions you want to add?
Sure, I've looked over both of the opinions, and I think reasonable minds can disagree as to the driveway. I think the addition might be more problematic, though, with that 10.1-foot setback. So I guess my biggest question for you would be, have you explored going to land court or possibly another court to have the paper street eliminated so that you could assume that next 20 feet of land?
When the lawyer looked up that stuff, that easement was established in 1905 when the whole Packagug Heights development was put in. So his comment was that you'd have to get permission from everybody who was part of that Packagug Heights, which didn't seem to be a reasonable course of action. It seemed more reasonable for this board to grant a waiver in that it's not a street, it's just a wooded area now, and to be less than 20 feet from that. I think the building we're proposing is about 11 and a half feet from the line at one end and maybe 13 feet from the other end. And that it didn't seem that that's impacting anybody. In fact, it's improving the neighborhood. So that, the part of the structure being 20 feet, that it's a main road is really, it's not a road, it's...
I hear what you're saying. Because there's no pavement, there's no gravel, it seems ludicrous to you to call this a street.
Right.
And
since 1905, when it was established.
when I'm not in my law office, I totally agree with you. But, legally, I think a paper street is a street, and that's why you're here in the first place.
Right.
And that's what makes the addition more challenging. And in terms of the driveway, you're improving it. You're making it more street-like. You're making it more usable for yourself and anybody else might want to use that stretch of driveway that you would be putting on that paper street. But the setback in terms of the house is tougher. And that's why I ask if you had explored just having the paper street eliminated by a court.
They wouldn't even do the records, to go back into the records. The man...
He thought it would be a lot of time and effort to do that. And that's what I thought the zoning board was for, is to look at things and say, is this reasonable or unreasonable, and to grant a variance. You talk about the law, and I realize the law, and that's why we're here, because it couldn't be approved without some variance. And we were hoping that that's what this board would do, would look at it and say, this is reasonable, and grant us permission to be less than 20 feet from the line. Because it's not, if we were asking to build out into the front of the house and to the street that's there, Ward Street, that would be one thing. And it just seems that it's reasonable to allow that to happen.
So I guess my follow-up question would be, is there any chance at all that the town or somebody would want to improve this paper street and make it an actual street?
I don't see why.
It's only about, let me see.
Single block, yes.
Maybe 160 feet, two house lots, our house lot and the house behind us. It goes between Lexington and Ward.
There would be no reason to have
Mr. Chairman?
a street there.
Answer to that question, from viewing the property, there is no chance that you can put another dwelling in that area. It is, as the claimant said, it goes from Ward Street to Lexington Street. There are houses on either side, and there is no way you are going to get another structure in there. As a paper road, I can see where it would be on paper there, and somebody could say, that's fine. But there's no way anybody is going to improve that land.
I think maybe you misunderstood because my voice is so terrible today. But I was talking about if someone were to improve it, not with a dwelling, but make a passable, drivable road out of that paper street.
No reason for it.
That would be very,
actually
very
no-
unlikely. They would have to take down a couple of very, very big trees in the way. Be very unlikely that anybody would be doing anything with that land currently. That's, the
Nobody's done
holdup
anything
is the
with the
fact that
land
it's on paper.
1905.
Yeah, I agree that if you look at a map, there's no readily apparent reason for having a paper street there.
Wonder why they did it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
You may.
So two quick, just one quick administrative piece. I see that Ms. Roach has stepped back. So in order for us, as we move forward, to try to avoid a supermajority need, if we want to bring one of the alternates forward.
Yeah, I was going to explain that to him when the time came, but I appreciate that. Thank
No
you.
worries. All right, then
Yep. No,
I
that's good,
won't
yeah.
step in. You've got it. But if I may, on this case, in summary, and I'm not trying to speed through this, but two things I just want to comment on. Mr. Hennigan, who is town council, had provided this to the town early November. I'm concerned that, quite frankly, the applicants are just receiving it this evening. I feel it puts them at a slight disadvantage in just receiving this information this evening. I also think that this is, listening to the applicants and your thoughtful comments, I mean, the zoning board certainly does have a purpose to take a look and judge at reasonableness on a piece of property. The challenge I see before us is that there is a certain jurisdiction that's out of our view here, meaning that we can certainly debate whether or not this is a road and what could potentially come of it. I did view the property. My concern with this is that out of our view is our ability to essentially waive the process that was suggested to you initially. Certainly tedious, probably almost impractical to search down everyone and basically, but I'm not confident that this board would have the authority to essentially waive the rights of all of those folks that actually have access and have been granted rights to this easement. The concern for that is, and there's a practical notion here, and then there's, I think, a logistic as well as a litigious notion here. The litigious notion here is that we can't change the fact that this is a paper road, and that other folks other than yourself and folks that didn't show up here tonight have rights to that. We don't have the authority, in my view, to waive those rights in any way. That would be a litigious process that would be out of our view. And I think you eloquently described how impractical that may be. But even that being the case, our ability to grant, and I don't think that there's a question on whether or not what you're trying to accomplish is reasonable. I also don't think there's a question of whether or not you need relief to do that. But our ability to provide that relief would be contingent upon whether or not that there would be a litigious concern later in our town council. So we have been provided two different legal opinions this evening, one of which sounds like you had sought their counsel at Roach and Wren, and the other from the town attorney. I can only speak for myself and suggest that, again, irrespective of legal opinions, I don't believe that this board would have the authority to waive the right of abutters that have right to that easement, whether or not it's practical that they would want to use it, or whether or not it's bettering the neighborhood. I mean, it's a challenge for me to go in that direction, but I don't think we have the authority to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, I think we can explore that. So I want to break this down a little bit, but first, I want to actually ask Caitlin if you have any questions or concerns for the applicant or the board.
All my questions have been asked.
Okay, so I see this as
If I may, through the chair, excuse me,
Yes,
not
no,
to
it's
interrupt you. Can I make the applicant aware of the mandatory findings, and that may help them present their case a little better if they know what the mandatory findings
Yeah,
of a
of course,
variance are?
absolutely.
'Cause I'm not sure they do. Thank you.
Mr. David, while he does that, so I'm just going to, for our discussion, make the suggestion for board members to consider, given that the applicant is seeing the town council's letter for the first time this evening, I would, for one, be in favor of giving them an opportunity to step back without prejudice and rethink their approach to this, given the town council's position, and given the fact that they probably want some time to digest that decision.
I don't disagree with you. So I see, we have the, it's the layers of the onion here, I see. We're talking about the building permit itself, which I personally don't have a problem with, but again, I don't want to influence anybody's opinion. The driveway concern, I mean, we've been through this before. One that comes to mind is the barber shop over on Oxford Street that actually has the old original Main Street running through it. And this was before most of you were on the board. This is when I think Mr. Cussy and I actually had this hearing. The owner of that particular building came forward and needed to take care of some, really it was just a legal matter in terms of, clarifying the fact that this road actually drove through his building. And it took 3 or 4 hearings to actually straighten it out. But, there are several paper roads in town that are under this same circumstance that we've dealt with in the past. And I know that they are case by case, but, based on Mr. Chicolo's observations of it not really being a practical road to develop, my question would really be to you is, does it have to be a finished driveway? I mean, could you really just kind of clear the property a little bit and just put some gravel down or something like that?
Well, one of the other options is we could put the driveway coming from the other direction. If we put on the addition, the driveway could come from the opposite end.
And see, I personally have to say that I don't have a problem with either of them, even with the paper road, because quite honestly, it's a paper road from 1905. It could literally sit there for the next 1,000 years and just not do anything, right? So that's one thing I see. And if they tar it, and if somebody wants to develop it, it's not really an impediment to the development of that road again. It's just tar. I mean, so, they've actually made it easier for them to develop that road again, in theory, to get a piece of equipment down there or whatever it might be. And it's not really blocking that road.
And if that did happen, however likely or unlikely it might be, if that did happen, then you are faced with essentially not being able to honor any kind of variance that would be needed because of the setback, because now it's the front yard. So you can't honor any variance that you would need if that happens. There are so many balls in the air here.
Right.
That one thing does affect the other.
You're right. At first glance, it just appears like it's a pretty simple issue, quite honestly. And then as you more kind of delve into it, you see that there are a few other issues underlying.
Is this, Caleb, if I might?
Please, go right ahead.
Caleb, is this a separate strip of land between the owned and surveyed land of the abutters?
This is a street that wasn't constructed, so it's surveyed as a street. There are probably hundreds of people that have rights to it.
Yeah.
They
It's
have,
not just the, excuse me, it's not just the immediate people that reside on it. You've got many abutters.
if they improve it and other people want to use it, they have rights to use it.
Right. So that's one thing that's understandable and clear. Like Caleb makes a very valid point. I actually know of another circumstance in town where a driveway overlaps somebody else's property by about 3 feet. And really, in theory, they could go and park their car right on there if they want, and that owner can't really say anything about it. It's basically like parking on the side of a street, if you will. So that's something to consider also. I mean, would it be feasible? And I am not trying to I understand that you've got a lot of time and money invested into this project. Could you just push the addition back 10 feet? Would it be practical based on the structure or no?
It's not practical.
Okay. And I'm just trying to come up with certain ways to try to go around these things, really, As the board, we always said we try to help, not impede,
It seems like that this could be done in stages and get different approvals. The first approval is to be within 20 feet from that paper road. And that, to me, doesn't seem to be a big stretch. The other part would be the driveway, if the driveway would be encroaching on the paper street, or would we need to put it someplace else? Because our driveway now is on the other side of the house.
And on the other side of this strip of land known as the street, there is, I'm assuming there's a neighbor, correct?
Yep.
So if you all got together and you just decided to, let's just say, clear all the trees out and level it out and grow grass there, what's the difference? I mean, I'm just asking, really, honestly.
Nothing until it,
Until somebody else, but, right, so they're going
right,
to be
until
spending
somebody
money
else
on
says,
property
I'm
they
going to
don't...
park on your grass.
Right, so in theory, then if they wanted to develop it and put the driveway on, they're spending that money knowing there's a possibility they could lose it.
I think the way the land is now, where they would be putting that driveway, it's not passable, because I believe the driveway would replace trees, which of course one cannot walk through. Am I correct in that assumption?
That it would replace trees?
You would have to cut down
Not mine.
There are
Not that
trees-
section. There's some trees.
trees in the paper road.
Yeah.
Yes, but
that
not
would be cut
on the
down.
section that we're talking
No,
about.
we wouldn't cut those trees.
Oh, you wouldn't? Oh, okay.
They're
It's
further
impassable now
back.
anyways, because there were trees on that paper road. I mean,
So
The
you
other
would,
end, towards the Lexington end,
Right.
there's a bunch of trees.
So in putting
you
the
wouldn't drive right through.
so where the driveway would sit on this paper road would actually be more passable. The freshly paved section would be more passable than it would be without the driveway.
Right, because there's also a lip at the road that goes, you couldn't drive down there. It drops off about 6 or 7 feet. So we'd like to just level that.
Mr. Chairman?
Plant grass if you want.
Yes.
I think that we're trying to justify, could it be done, should it be done? For me, what they're asking for this evening is variance for the 20-foot setback. I don't think that, I'll certainly speak for myself, but others have already expressed, I don't think that that's our hang-up. What I'd like to pursue, relevant to Mr. Hennigan's feedback, is whether or not we have the authority to grant someone to modify a piece of property that they don't completely control.
Right, I agree.
And I think that's my hang-up on whether or not we're kind of leaning too far over our skis on that one, and putting the town in any jeopardy. I think it's impractical to think that a single abutter or someone else that would have rights to this property would ever approach them and say, hey, I don't agree with this, I don't like this, don't do this, I want to use it. I think that's a nonsensical, in my view. They're not going to make that argument to these good people. But I want to, again, and this may be too conservative for anyone's taste, but I want to make sure we have the authority to grant a single homeowner the authority to change a piece of property that they don't have full control over.
Right, I see your
And
point.
I think that's my hang-up.
Okay. So I go back to your earlier comment that, granted, they just received the letter from the town attorney. We just received the letter from the attorney they sought opinion on. And you can see our concerns. We are trying to help as much as we can, but I think we have to side with the issues that the vice chair brought up, and I think that, the road is technically not owned by you to develop it, and we can't really give you permission to do so.
If I can follow up on that, because I know I
Yes.
said it to you in private, but I'd like to go on the record and suggest, given that the applicants just received this information this evening, I'd very much like to give them an opportunity without prejudice to step back, take a look at this, digest this information, if they chose, digest this information and see if there's something that we're missing, so that they might come back at a later date and reveal something that we're missing to give clearance to some of my concerns.
So I think if you understood what the vice chair is suggesting is the possibility of requesting a continuation. We're not trying to delay a project or anything, but really we're trying to make sure everyone is covered, I guess, if you will. So given the new information that you have and we have, a continuation to next month might not be a bad idea. You can go through all this, you can filter through it, try to see if you maybe come up with a different plan for the driveway. Or, again, this is your opinion, we can vote on it this evening. It's really up to you. You're the applicant, so.
And before they comment, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm one voice here, and I appreciate, kind of turning your head to these topics, but I'd very much like the other board members to weigh in, challenge me, I'm in no way trying to delay this, and I would very much, just for the spirit of this, like to find a way to ease my concern and let them move forward. But I also see our role as being stewards of the town in this issue. And so, but I'd like the other board members to challenge my opinion, if so.
I do have one question for Mr. Merritt. So do you see this as an issue of notice to all those people holding rights to that paper street?
I see that as a potential element, but I don't know how, I don't think that's practical. I think that it would cost a lot of money, and I think you'd probably never ring fence everyone based on some of the information that they've provided. I think that's probably an impractical process. But I think that legally, that's likely one of the boxes that would need to be checked, or at least attempted. I'm not asking them to do that. I'd like to be wrong, and I'd like someone to come back and tell me that I'm being too conservative for their sake, and that there's another way to do this. But as I see what's before me in the brief, that's how I land.
If I may, through the,
Hang on, Mr. Cussy, go ahead.
What about upgrading the road 40 feet wide past their property? 40 foot, gravel it, then have a driveway off of it? I believe.
if I may, through the chair, I think we have to go back to Mr. Maron's original comment. All that's before this board is putting the structure closer than 20 feet to the edge of the road.
Right.
It's not the improvement of the road, it's not the location of the driveway. This board has no authority to approve or deny a driveway in that roadway.
Right.
So it's merely just whether they can build that structure within 20 feet of that paper street.
And I think that's what we need to focus on.
I think we're getting off.
Any of that. So if we strictly remove all of these things that we just talked about, and we discuss just the structure and the setback, where our opinions are on that. So do we want to?
I'm still stuck on that one. I think the 10 point something or 11 point something foot setback is problematic. Whereas the driveway, it's reasonable lines could disagree, but that one's easier to let go. So it's the setback against that paper street that has me stuck.
All right. Mr. Cussy, given the new information or the clarification?
I just, 10 feet's a lot to give up on a variance with setbacks, but each piece of property is individual that we look at, so. I don't, so alls we have, we're not talking about the road at all?
Nope, we're just
driveway.
going to go by the driveway,
Just the
the addition and the
setback.
setback. Mr. Chicolo?
Yeah.
I think I've alluded to the fact that I believe that the variance is a problem.
Okay.
And I think you could put a structure up in addition, and there wouldn't be any problem. What's causing the problem is the paper road. That's why there's a variance being asked for.
Right.
So that you've got to consider that there's something there that exists. Okay. Let alone the fact that I don't see anything in the topology that is there that would cause me to say, okay, they deserve consideration for a variance. It's a piece of land with a slope. It's probably a 12-degree slope from Ward Street to Lexington. There's trees, but there's trees on That's got nothing to do with the topology.
Sure.
Okay? The only reason we're here to talk about a variance is because the setback from point X, which is a paper road, is not 20 feet. Neither is the setback from the existing house to that 20 feet, but it is a side, it's not the front.
Right. I know what you mean. Well, again, with Mr. Hennigan or Attorney Hennigan's opinion, he's saying with both roads, they're both considered to be fronts.
They have to be by our bylaw even.
Right.
So who would make the decision on the road or driveway?
Talking about eliminating the road?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would, land court, I think Superior Court might also be able to do it.
Right.
And then that would just completely get rid of the road and essentially give them a 20-foot strip of land tacked onto their property. And the people on the other side would also get the other 20-foot strip.
That's an awful big burden for the applicant to endure.
Awful.
To go, so housing court in Worcester is about 2 years behind, generally speaking.
I think that's why people go to Superior.
I would agree with
That's why
you.
people go to Superior, right?
And it's local.
I would agree with you that it's a heck of a burden, but with all the legal prowess that we have sitting here, maybe that they can say to me, nope, can't be done, Larry, but this can't be the first time that abutters, large or small group abutters that were not there when this was instituted, okay, over 100 years ago, okay, or close to it. This can't be the first time that we've run up against people who have sold 2 or 3 times or whatever. There's got, if a zoning board has some leeway, the courts have to have some leeway in how those people can be notified or would be notified, whether it be a public posting, whether it be through the newspaper, whatever. And that could be the first step in this, saying, look, no abutters have a problem with this, okay? It needs to go. And I also do believe that the more either abutters or public opinion weighed in on it, and when I say public opinion, I'm talking about people in the area, okay, where you are, weigh in on it. It's such a benign thing that's going on here that they would have the sympathies of everybody. I would absolutely like to be the one that would vote in the affirmative on it.
So basically, the road has to get, or driveway has to get squared away first.
Well, again, we're not really going to be dealing with the driveway issue at all. We're going to be dealing with just the setback. And honestly, on a paper road, again, I'm just speaking for myself here. I'm not even speaking as the chair. It's a paper road that's been on the book since 1905. There's nothing's been done with it. I mean, so is it technically even a setback?
I would say it is.
It is.
Because it's still a paper road, nobody's actually gotten that road eliminated yet.
Right.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, you're articulating exactly my problem with this, is that, you know, in practicality, I don't think any one of us, and again, we all like the disclaimer is I'm not speaking for you, of course, but I don't think anyone has a problem with granting them relief for that space. But I think that there's an underlying legal matter here with the authority of basically encroaching on a paper road that we can't get out from under because we don't have the authority to essentially just say, well, it doesn't matter, because unfortunately it does matter.
Even if those people are unaware of their rights.
Right. Has anybody have the current abutters been notified of all this? And has anybody expressed a negative or positive opinion either way?
person who shares next to our land, the other side, I mean, he certainly would like to see this come out positive for him too.
Okay.
So he can have access to that. You know, and the opinion we got from Ren was that in most cases, they divided up from the middle of the road, 20 feet that way, 20 feet this way, and people have access, use of that land. I would love for the town to take initiative and take over the land. I'd love to pay taxes on it. Buy it from the town and pay taxes on it. That just doesn't seem feasible. That
is
would happen. The other thing is, you know, you're talking about this and want to postpone it. I took down my deck in April, thinking that this was going to move right along. I came to the town hall here and talked to some people, mostly secretaries, and they said, you know, we've done this before, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem, and I started moving along with that in mind, and all of a sudden, we get a big roadblock.
Well, again, and then that's the problem when you seek out an opinion of somebody that's not an authority to give one.
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing, I'm just, you know, I mean, you got to speak to the right people before you can ask if that's, you know.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Caleb, you had motion. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that the applicant stated that if it moved forward positively for them, then their neighbor would like to take part and use the roadway. So that, I think that's town council's concern, is if these people improve this section, and these people improve this section, and these people improve this section, and then these people improve their section, then you have a roadway that's not built to town standards, and who's going to maintain that road? Who's going to plow it? Who's going to take care of it at that point? So
And that's the other issue too, is when you come to that, we have a lot of private roads that people have issues with in town because they don't get properly maintained.
And then once those 4 properties improve that roadway so it's passable, there's thousands of people that could use that roadway. And then it's a liability to the town because it's not built to town standards. But again, this is just about the setback to that road and whether they can meet the mandatory findings.
Okay, so given all the information, I don't really think we're adding any additional value to this. Do I have a motion to close the public portion of the hearing?
Motion to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
So when I just close the public portion of the hearing, that's just so the boards can we can kind of discuss amongst ourselves. I can't take any more feedback. It's part of the process that we go through. So I'm going to go around the horn one more time, just find out, kind of get a general idea. Mr. Cussy?
I'm going to stick with the town council.
Okay. Mr. Chicolo?
I'm going to stick with what I've previously said about, and this is strictly on the variance. You're not holding the vote right now, or you are holding?
No, I'm just asking for if we have any other further additional discussion to...
No further
In or
comment.
out?
No further comments.
Okay. Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel, although it's not an unusual spot for me to be in to spark a fair amount of discussion, I feel responsible for the roads that we've gone down. No pun intended for this application. I would like, given the new information that's been provided to the applicant, to give them an opportunity thoughtfully to see if they wish to step back and see if there's a different avenue that they could take, seek some additional guidance, and give them an option to withdraw without prejudice and postpone. If that would be my advice to the applicant. This evening, if we were pressed to a vote, with everything before us, I would also stick with Mr. Hennigan's as he backs this board. In his opinion, unless any additional information came forward, I wouldn't be supporting this.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
I initially didn't support Mr. Hennigan's conclusions, but Mr. Marin pointed out a section that I had completely glossed over, and now I agree with his conclusion.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to open the public hearing again then?
I'll make the motion open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So you've heard the discussion. I think you know if we went to a vote this evening where it would probably go. I think Mr. Maron is offering some sound advice that if you were taking the new information, it gives us the opportunity to give you the opportunity for a continuation, sort through the information that you received this evening, come up with a alternative means of answers to the questions, I think, or to unearth some new information that might help you get through this. I just, again, if it was my vote, I would vote in favor, but I am only one vote on the board, and obviously the others have different opinion. I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Hennigan's legal knowledge and advice of the board. He's never really steered us wrong. And again, this paper road just makes it a little complicated for us to give a setback of, we're basically splitting that setback in half, is really what it comes down to. 3 feet, 5 feet, you know, that kind of thing, we've kind of granted and not really worried about it too much. But when you're talking about cutting that in half, it's kind of a substantial amount. Looking at it on paper, it really doesn't make a difference, but again, it's because you have that issue in front of you. Maybe you'd want to consult with your, you know, bring all this forward to your attorney again and see if there's some kind of a dissenting opinion that might help. I'm not really sure. So given that information, do you have a request or motion on what you would like to do?
The choices?
Well, there are, but I mean, I think we've been fair enough to kind of let you know where it might go, and, you know.
They're absolutely...
We're trying to help you. I don't want to see you get, you know, any more financial burden, and given the circumstance of the project, you know, you could walk out of here empty-handed tonight and won't have, if we vote this evening, whichever way it goes, you can't reapply for the board for, what is it 2 years, Caleb, or a year?
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, just explain the process to the applicant. So if you were to receive a negative vote tonight, you could not reapply for 2 years unless your application was considerably different. The board would have to acknowledge that it was different before they voted to approve or deny. You do have the ability to withdraw without prejudice. That way you could reapply, or you could ask for a continuance and come back next month.
So withdraw without prejudice means that you could go, it could take, you could come back in the spring, let's say. If we gave you continuation, we could do it up to, you know, it could be next month, it could be January, which still is going to put you into springtime work. So again, I can't influence you either way. I think just so you understand what it is, if you withdraw without prejudice, you got to reapply, come before the board again. If you continue, you can keep this particular hearing open, go seek more legal opinion, try to get some more clarification. You can come back earlier, like next month right away, first meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I owe an apology because as you were explaining before Caleb spoke, I interrupted you.
That's okay. We go back and forth all the time. I don't
Fair
worry.
enough, but I didn't want, no disrespect intended. But you do have choices, sir. So you have two choices. You, one, can request a vote this evening, or you can take one of the options that was explained to give you an opportunity to step back and rethink your application. It's not, and as I've done a fair amount of talking this evening, it's not my intent. Believe what you will. It's not my intent to not see you go forward here. I just like to make sure that it's done in such a way that there's no risk to the town, which I see that that's my role. I'm just one volunteer, but I also want to see you successful and not put yourself in a bind. And so that's my intent. But you do have those two choices this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So with that being said, I mean, would that be something you'd be interested in? What do you want to do?
I think the continuance is the best idea. If in fact we try to accumulate some more information and we don't have it by the next date that you set, can we postpone that and
Yes, so the board has the authority to continue. We would open the hearing, like we did for the first one this evening, open the hearing, request a continuation, acknowledge everything publicly, and then close that hearing again, and that could be extended to January or whatever it might be.
That's what we'd like to do.
Okay, so the applicant is requesting a continuation. The next meeting actually officially is December 19th. So they'd be requesting the first continuation would be December 19th meeting. Do I have a motion to accept or deny the application's request?
I'm going to make that motion to accept the request, but I would like, Mr. Chairman, for you to bring officially one of the alternates forward. I don't think a supermajority is needed,
It is
but I
not,
do
you're
want to
right.
respect that they're here, and let's bring one of them forward.
Sure, so, because of the attorney's office you sought out, one of the members of the board is actually a partner in that law firm. So, she recused herself and left, that's why. So we have alternate members here for a reason, so what we do is we bring Mr. Jones up to vote on it, just so you understand how the process is. So we have the 5 seating members and 2 alternates, so since Ms. Rhodes left, would bring Mr. Jones forward, he'd be voting on your hearing for this evening, so just so you're aware.
I will second the motion by Mr. Maron.
Okay.
And you have brought him forward then.
Correct. Okay, so let's just go around and we'll just do a roll call vote. Mr. Cussy?
I'll go.
Okay, so you accept the request for continuation? Mr. Chacolo?
I second the motion.
I know, but I'm just going through just because this might get complicated.
Affirmative.
Mr. Maron?
Yes.
Jones? And I vote yes. So you have your continuation to the December 19th hearing. Given all that information this evening, you can hopefully filter through that and find some type of relief for yourself. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Please be patient. I understand sometimes
Gotta be
this
illegal.
can get a little complicated, but we'll do everything we can to try to help you get through this as much as we can. Okay, thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to close the 7:10 hearing?
Motion to close?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. So we took care of the minutes of the meeting, and we took care of the signatures required. Does anyone have any new business to attend to?
None.
None? Okay. So one thing I will bring up, just in case there actually is anybody at home, we have a zoning bylaw review committee that is lacking members. So if anybody's interested in volunteering for the community, having an impact on certain things like we just saw this evening, if you could reach out to the town hall, specifically the building department, and maybe you could volunteer and come and help us out, get some of these crazy old zoning bylaws off of the books and straightened out.
On what night of the week is?
It varies. We try to meet once a month. It's been kind of sporadic with the holidays in the summertime and, but usually once a month, we try to address what the town brings up first, and then we go back and we kind of get into the old business, and we're just digging through page by page, and, these are the things that come up: setbacks, driveways, additions, garages, basketball hoops, old roads that are on since 1905 that nobody's ever addressed. And nobody knows there's probably 50 to 60 of these roads in town, but they don't come up until somebody wants to do something with them. So that's really what the problem comes.
Right.
Okay, so with that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay, thank you.